Hi folks, welcome to this video on nutrition. This one is about the roles of the key nutrients. There are 7 nutrients that we're interested in. Okay, they could ask you questions on in the exam. Number 1, carbohydrates. Okay, so what we need to know is we need to know a few things about why we need to eat carbohydrates every day. Right, so basically there are we can categorize carbohydrates in 2 different forms. Simple, or your sugary kind of carbs, or complex, or your starchy kind of carbohydrates. What we've got a picture of there are some typical complex carbohydrates: pastas, potatoes, rice, bread. Anything like that is a complex carbohydrate. Anything that is sugary, anything that is sweet to taste, fruit, honey, fizzy drinks, sweets, chocolate, they are naturally high in simple carbohydrates or sugars. Right, what are the implications of that? If you have some sugary carbohydrates, they are quick release. They get into your system and into your bloodstream very, very quickly. Your complex carbohydrates are your slow release. They get into the system gradually. Okay, now there's a couple of there's a term that we need to apply to each of these. The term that's used is glycemic index. So you might have heard of it before, you might not. Basically, your sugary carbohydrates, the ones that are high in sugar that get into your system very, very quickly, are high glycemic index. Your complex starchy carbohydrates that are slow release are low glycemic index. What is the impacts? What does this ultimately mean? Because that's what we're interested in for the athlete. It means one very, very important thing. Okay, what is the one role of carbohydrates in the body? It is energy production. Simple as that. We don't eat carbohydrates for any other reason other than to produce energy. However, when we eat these carbohydrates is very, very important. These simple carbs, these sugars, these high glycemic index, they should be eaten less than, or consumed, because obviously fizzy drinks, less than 1 hour before activity. That could be training or competing. Because the point is, these are going to get into your blood sugar very, very quickly. So if you have them 3 or 4 hours before your event, they're going to be in the system and then used up before your event's even started. So these simple carbohydrates are going to be used very, very shortly before activity. Your complex carbohydrates, typically various textbooks say different things, but generally 2 to 4 hours before. The reason is, as I'm sure you can appreciate, these are starchy, these are your complex carbohydrates, pastas, they're going to take longer to digest. Hence why they are slow release, because they're going to take longer to get into the system. Things like sugary drinks, chocolate, sweets, they're already pretty much, they're ready to use as soon as it hits the stomach, pretty much. So that's why they're gonna need to be eaten 1 hour before. The classic pre-match meal or pre-performance meal for an athlete is to have a pasta, bread, potatoes based meal 2 to 4 hours before, and then an hour before, get on your Lucozade, get on your sugary sweets and drinks and things like that to top up your blood glucose levels, because that's going to last you for the first part of the game, these simple sugars, and then when they start running out, your complex carbohydrates, your slow release, will start to take over. Okay, so that's everything we need to know about carbohydrates. Okay, fats. Get in the press a lot, all bad news, right? Fats are absolutely vital to our survival. The problem we have in this country is that we eat too many of them, or too much of what we eat every day is fat-based, okay? We're going to look at how much you should eat of each one at the back end of this little presentation. But what we need to know, there are 4 key reasons why we need to eat fats every single day. Number 1, just like carbs, it's an energy source. But you might hear this term that carbs is your primary energy source and fats is your secondary energy source. That doesn't mean that we use carbs first and fats second, although it does sound like that. We can only burn fats when we're working aerobically. So when we're doing lots of walking, jogging, low intensity cycling and swimming, we're going to be burning a decent amount of fat. When we go into sprints and weights and plyometrics and things like that, we can't break fat down. We need lots of oxygen to break down fat. And when you're working at high intensity, you can't get oxygen into your system quickly enough. So that's when we use carbohydrates. We can use carbs all the time, low intensity and high intensity, hence why it's our primary energy source. Fats we can only use at low intensity, Hence why we call it our secondary energy source, because we can't use it all the time. But nevertheless, fats is very, very important for energy production. We also need it for protection. Fat protects our bodies. We need a certain level of body fat to protect vital organs. Think of your kidneys. Your kidneys are low down on your back. They're not protected by any ribs, but you should be able to grab a little bit of fat there when you grab onto the lower part of your back. That fat is there to protect your kidneys from any impacts and things like that. But also you should have a nice thin layer of fat over your muscles to give them a little bit of protection. We also need fat to act as insulation. Now, I would be careful with this one. Sometimes the question comes up, why does an athlete need to eat a diet high in fat? If it's for 3 marks, I wouldn't put insulation down as a mark. The reason is because when we're exercising, we actually want to lose a lot of heat. We don't want to keep it trapped into our body. So insulation is good for day-to-day life, but for an athlete, generally we're building high temperatures when we're exercising. So we don't need as much insulation. But there is another one that we can put down that's very, very important and you might not have heard of before. We also use fat to store vitamins. So let's say you've had a really, really healthy day. Let's say you've had your 5 a day on a particular day and you've eaten more vitamins than what you've needed. You will actually store some of those vitamins in your body fat so that if you have a very poor diet the next day, you can go and get some of the vitamins out of your body fat stores. If you haven't got any body fat, you can't store vitamins. Okay, so it's very, very important that we do have body fat in order to store some vitamins, give us energy, offer us some protection, and provide us with insulation. Just on a side note here, you'll notice on the picture we've got a reference to good fats and bad fats. What we need to be doing is the fat that we should eat every day should come from foods like this. So things like your fish oils, your omega-3 fatty acids, they're vitally important. For day-to-day life, for functioning, for brain development, for heart development, but also things like from nuts and pulses and things like that. They're very, very important fats. Basically, any fat that is relative liquid form at room temperature is classified as, a healthy fat. I know nuts and pulses are liquid at room temperature, but your virgin olive oils, your extra virgin olive oils, your fish oils, they're your good fats. Your bad fats are the ones that are solid at room temperature. Your butter, your lard, things like that. You might look at these and go, where's the fat in them? Remember, it's the ingredients that goes into it. These are deep fried to make them crispy. A lot of butter has gone into making this sponge and into this chocolate. The high levels of cheese that are in this pizza contain high levels of fat. So we should try and maximise the good fats in our diet and minimise the bad fats. Protein then. The classic thing about protein is, I'm sure you're all aware, is growth and repair. It allows me, allows you, it allows us all to grow and repair our muscle tissue. Okay? But it's also important in any structural substance in the body. But growth and repair in terms of athletes of muscle. But don't forget, we can, and we often do, use protein as an energy source as well. We try not to. We'd have to be fairly low on carbs and fats in order to use protein as an energy source, but we still do use a very small percentage of protein every day to produce energy, but its main function is muscle growth and repair. But like I said, we use proteins for anything structural. Hormones and enzymes are also made of proteins. They make things in the body, they make things up. So hormones, things like adrenaline, enzymes, things that speed up reactions in your body to help you to produce energy quicker, are also made of protein. And as you can see from the picture, okay, your usual suspects for your protein, your meat, fish. Winds me up vegetarians who say that fish isn't meat. Of course it's meat. It's muscle tissue of animals, same as steak is, same as chicken is. But you've also got things like your eggs. Particularly your egg whites are very high in protein as well. Also some berries and some green veg, broccoli, things like that have decent levels of protein in them. But it is mainly your meat products. Protein supplements have grown very much in sport over the recent years, but particularly for people who are like vegetarians, who don't want to eat meat and fish, but need to get protein for muscle growth and repair. It's a very, very good thing to use. My advice to you is, if you eat a lot of meat in your diet, there's no added benefit to protein supplements such as powders or anything like that. If you're getting the right amount of protein, there's no point in supplementing it in your diet. Right, so on to vitamins then. This is where it doesn't get tricky, but this is where obviously it gets slightly more complicated, because all carbohydrates provide you with energy. All fats provide you with energy, protection, insulation, and vitamin storage in the body. All proteins provide you with growth and repair and energy as well. But every single vitamin does a slightly different job to all the others. So what we need are a few examples. But you need to make that point. All vitamins don't do the same thing. So we need a few examples of what different vitamins do in the body. Vitamin B is massively important for athletes. It's one of these boom vitamins. You'll find it in everything these days. You can find it in those little caffeine shots that you can buy. You'll find it in Red Bull and all your sports drinks and things like that. What does vitamin B do? It allows us to convert food into energy. So if you have like a pasta-based meal with vitamin B added to it, you will convert more of that pasta into energy. So it maximizes the amount of energy you get from your food. So it's a very, very important vitamin for athletes and performers. Vitamin C, which you get from all your citrus fruits, things like that, very important for the development and support of your immune system. Particularly, in cold weather, when colds and viruses and bugs are going around, you should eat a lot of vitamin C or consume a lot of vitamin C. But don't forget, athletes, they push their body to the limit all the time. So weirdly, a lot of people have told me, who've taught me over the years at university, that, an athlete's fitness is what's called on a knife edge. They're on the edge of being supremely fit, but also being supremely unfit. They're actually on the borderline of being quite unhealthy as well as healthy, because they burn all the fuels that they're using. It actually leaves their immune system quite weak. So, vitamin C supplementation for athletes is very, very important to support their immune system. Vitamin D helps with bone development. So you might think, I thought that was calcium. What vitamin D does, it helps drag the calcium into the bones and makes the bones stronger. So those two often go very, very well with each other. And I don't know why I finished with vitamin A. I could have gone A, B, C, D, but I didn't for whatever reason. Vitamin A, very good for eye development, skin development, bone development, teeth development. It's very good for tissue repair generally. So, particularly for the athletes in contact sports, things like that, doing lots of heavy lifting, heavy weights. Vitamin A is very good to help repair your tissue. So it's very, very important that we're making sure our athletes are getting these every single day. And like I said, it's mainly your fruits and your vegetables that we're getting a lot of our vitamins from. The reason that you're told to have 5 different portions of fruit and veg a day, not just 5 portions of the same fruit or vegetable, is because each one contains a different vitamin. So by getting different portions, you're ensuring that you're getting a range of all these different vitamins. Minerals are similar to vitamins in that each mineral does a different job to all the others. So not all minerals do the same thing. Now, here's my advice. There's 2 that they generally like to focus on. I could quote you a load of minerals: sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium, things like that. But there are 2 that they keep coming back to time and time again. Okay? Number 1 is calcium. And you can see pictures of the foods that calcium are high in. And number 2 is iron. For some reason, they love talking about these 2 minerals more than any others. Calcium, linked with vitamin D, but it's bone development. But something else that you might not know that calcium also does, it's also involved in muscular contractions. Without calcium, we can't contract our muscles. Contractions, I'm spelling it wrong. And, believe it or not, it also clots our blood a little bit. So when you start to bleed, a little bit of calcium will help clot the blood and stop you from bleeding for a long period of time. There are platelets in your blood that help do that as well, but calcium plays a small but significant role in that. So, who's going to need lots of calcium? All athletes are going to need lots of calcium, but particularly those involved in contact sports, impacts, where you need big, strong bones, where you're producing very big muscular contractions, but you're also at risk of maybe taking a knock and having a bit of a bleed, things like that. That's very, very important. And you'll find it in the foods that we've identified here: your milk, your dairy products, your nuts, your yogurts, broccoli, things like that. Very, very high in calcium. Finally then, iron. What does iron do? It produces our red blood cells, hemoglobin, as it's more technically known. Your red blood cells are made of iron, okay? Now, the thing is, like everything else in your body, your red blood cells have a shelf life. After a few months, they're tired and they need to be broken down and they need to be replaced with fresh hemoglobin, fresh red blood cells. If you're not eating enough iron in your diet, you can't replace them. And you get conditions like anemia, people who are tired all the time. It's because they haven't got enough red blood cells. You can't carry oxygen, so you feel tired all the time. So it's very, very important that we're eating iron every single day. And it's going to come, because it's linked with red blood cells and hemoglobin, you're going to find it in your red meats in particular. But you'll also find a lot of breakfast cereals, even things like tinned beans and tinned spaghetti have high levels of iron added to them to help supplement it in the diet. So make sure that you're checking these labels to make sure you're getting your iron every single day. Very rare to see a question on fibre, but it's worth covering just to make sure we've spoken about it. Fibre is a form of carbohydrate. So do we use it as energy? Actually, we don't really. Fibre helps with the digestion of our food. Okay? As I'm sure you're aware, it helps prevent things like constipation. When you're a bit bunged up, to put it bluntly, okay? However, because fibre takes quite a while to digest and slow down, it can slow rate of digestion of all foods. So what we're trying to say there is, if you've eaten some food and you've now got a 2-hour game, or a long race or something like that that's going to last an hour and a half, 2 hours, it can slow the release of other substances into your system, which is going to be quite beneficial, as opposed to all the carbs hitting your system in one go and your body using it very quickly and then you running out of it very soon. Because fibre slows your entire digestion down, you can release carbohydrates into your system more gradually and help you last your event a little bit better. And as you can see, it's high in all the foods that you'd expect. Your brown breads, your wholemeal pastas, your cereals, things like that. All your wholemeal products, that's where you're going to find lots of fibre. Finally then, our last nutrient. So there's 7: carbs, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, fibre and water. They're your 7 nutrients. Some books say that alcohol is a nutrient, but we're talking about athletes here, so alcohol consumption is very low, or in fact none, to be honest, for the vast majority of athletes. So water, well, what can we say about it? Well, it's about 60% of your body weight is made up of water, i.e. pretty much all of you contains some level of water. What are the main reasons that we have it? Well, one of its key functions is to help us control our body temperature, i.e. through sweating. So when we get too hot, we will put some of our water on the skin surface, and that will allow us to evaporate heat away from the body and into the atmosphere. So sweating is very, very important for controlling our body temperature, and you can only sweat if you've got water in your body. You might know this already, you might not, but 50% of your blood is water. So you've got 8 pints of blood in your body. That's the average for an average sized person. 4 pints of that is just water, good old fashioned H2O. So without water in your blood, you can't effectively pump blood around the body. It becomes viscous, it becomes thick. Think about cardiovascular drift when we looked at that. When you start to lose water from your blood, the blood becomes more viscous, it's harder to pump around the body. So staying hydrated is very, very important, okay? And how much you've got to hydrate is dependent on 2 factors really: intensity and duration. How hard are you training or competing, and how long are you training for? If both of those are high, you're going to have to hydrate a hell of a lot. Okay, so it's very, very important that we maintain body fluid levels all the time as best we can. We're always going to get a bit of dehydration. Okay, it's always going to happen when we're exercising, but it's trying to minimise it. It's trying to make sure we're replacing the fluids as well as we can. So the balanced diet then. This sometimes comes up as a 1 or 2 marker. What is a balanced diet? Well, you need to know this following definition. That's it there. It's eating the correct amount of each nutrient each day. So those 7 nutrients that we've just mentioned there, when you have a balanced diet, you eat the correct amount of each nutrient each day. So what is the correct amount? Okay, that's what we need to be aware of. So if I move this down here and I move this down, or move this there, sorry, obviously we can categorise, although we don't like to categorise people. Right, normal people who don't play sport, who don't train much but just live a normal day-to-day life. What we say is a balanced diet is 55% carbs. Okay, so 55, just a little over half of what you eat every day should be carbohydrates. 30% should be fats. So you see the importance of fats. Just under a third of what you eat every day should be fat. The problem is we eat more than that generally. Okay, which leaves 15% to be protein. People do 2 things in this country. They eat too much fats, and to be honest, they eat too much protein. We don't actually need that much, and that's just to maintain muscle mass. If you do that here, you'll stay the same weight. You won't put weight on, you won't lose weight. You'll be absolutely fine. You'll have enough carbs for your energy, enough fats for your energy, protection, insulation, vitamin storage, and enough protein to grow and repair muscle tissue and all other structural tissue in the body. What if you're an athlete? What if you're training? Obviously, it depends on what your event is, but there are general principles. What we need to do is carbs needs to increase to 60 to 75%. Now that's a massive, jump there, isn't it? But again, that's just showing the event that you do. So someone who's, let's say, a long distance runner or something like that, who's, a few weeks before the marathon, really needs to massively increase the carbs to support those extra miles that they're putting in. If you're not doing as much training, you might want to reduce your carbohydrate intake, but it's still more than what it is for a normal person. Because at the end of the day, carbs is fuel, it's energy. If you are an athlete, you are training more, so you need more carbs, regardless of your sport. Okay? So that's carbohydrates. Because we've increased our carbs and that's our primary energy source, our fats actually reduce a little bit. 20 to 25% fats. We still need fats, massively important. What we're basically saying there is a quarter of what you eat every day should be fat still. But because we're eating more carbs, we've got to reduce the fats a little bit. Okay? And protein, generally as a rule, is going to stay around about the same, 15%. You're going to have slightly more. But remember, we're talking about percentages. We're not talking about volumes. You're going to eat more as an athlete, but as a percentage of what it should be every day, we need to generally eat at least the same amount of protein, sometimes a little bit more. It depends on your sport, and that's what's covered in a few of the other videos as well. If you are a bodybuilder, weightlifter, power athlete, that's going to be a little bit higher because you need more protein to grow bigger, stronger muscles. If you're a distance runner, you're not going to have as much as that, but you might actually have a little bit more fat, because remember, what do we use fat for? Energy for low intensity activity, long distance running. So if I'm Mo Farah, even though he doesn't look very fat, and he isn't very fat, he probably eats a decent amount of fat because he burns it all off. But that's covered in another video. But generally, that is the rules on what we need to eat for a balanced diet, and they're the general percentages.